What's up, Boiler Nation? Purdue Football is 2-0, and Barry Odom is the first head coach to do that since 1913. Purdue won 34-17 over SIU last night. Let's break it down. Let's grade the offense, the defense, and talk about my players of the game. When we look at the flow of this game, right, the number one concern for everyone watching, SIU came out and scored 2 straight touchdowns. Quarterback DJ Williams was throwing the ball all over the field, but after those first 2 drives, things settled in. In the post-game interview, Barry Odom kind of talked about they had certain checks. So when there's a certain play going on and they recognize formation when they were supposed to switch what they were doing on defense, it didn't happen quickly enough. And then people were left essentially wide open because of either miscommunication, breakdowns of coverage, things like that. Those first couple drives that they got cleaned up and fixed heading into the third drive. And after that, for the rest of the 3 quarters, they only allowed 3 points and had a much better game. So overall was an interesting kind of flow. Purdue, once again, pretty clean. Only 2 penalties the entire game versus 5 for SIU. Overall, pretty good. 29 first downs, won the time of possession by 13 minutes. You hear that term complementary football thrown around a lot. And here it really was, right? When SIU went out and scored quickly, Purdue did the same thing. Once they got the lead, Purdue slowed down, managed time of possession, and did a really good job controlling the game and making sure SIU had zero chance to get back into it. Defensively, Purdue obviously got off to a rough start with SIU scoring on their first 2 possessions. Quarterback DJ Williams was throwing it all over on them, had 180 passing yards at the first half, and most of that being in the first quarter. But after those first 2 possessions, Barry Odom said they really calmed down. They handled some things internally where they're communicating different things, making checks into different types of defenses and things like that. And after those first 2 drives, they really settled down. Now, DJ Williams came in as a huge dual threat. He's a senior, lots of experience, right? And he ended up having a pretty solid game, throwing for a touchdown, throwing for over 200 yards. But we held him in check rushing. He'd had like 17 rushing yards, which is huge because he's a guy who last year against BYU, who was a 10-2 football team, had 120 rushing yards and 2 TDs. So the fact that we're able to keep him in check on the ground, really forced him to be a passer, and you saw late in the game, they pressured him a lot, had 14 pressures, 4 sacks on him. He really eventually started to feel the difference in the lines there, and that made a big difference for him. Now, I do think pass defense was a little bit suspect. Still got around on the edge sometimes on a couple big plays. So I think there are definitely some things Purdue defense needs to work on. I would give them a solid C to C plus today because you have to include those first 2 drives. When we look at the other side of the ball for Purdue, they scored 34 points. They scored more points than last week. However, they still left opportunities out on the field, I think. With a couple drop passes, the interception from Ryan Brown, there were a couple things where they didn't really break any huge plays, but they consistently drove the ball and had success on offense. They probably could have had a couple more points, but 34 is more than enough to win, and it was a solid game. They were highlighted by the 200 yards on the ground, led by Devin Maku with over 100 and 2 touchdowns. Ryan Brown had over 50, so we saw the quarterback get more involved in the run game, and that really helped them dominate, own the time of possession, and play complementary football today. Now, when it comes to Ryan Brown, he had a pretty good game overall. I feel pretty solid about it. Like, he still, made a lot of the throws he needs to. He still managed the game pretty well. Ran the ball today pretty effectively, so I like what he did. His interception was a little rough. He just kind of chucked it up deep. There were a couple times today where it felt like he had good protection and just kind of waited. Nothing was really there and just kind of chucked it deep to somebody, which isn't the worst thing you can do, right? You're giving your receiver a chance, but it still was pretty risky, and it didn't pay off on that throw to Armand Branch there. After he threw the pick, we saw him only throw the ball 4 more times after that. 2 of them being checkdowns, 1 being a screen, and 1 was off the play action Michael Jackson that was dropped. So overall, I think not a bad game for him. Could probably cleaned up a little bit, but he's a young guy, getting his first couple of starts still, getting used to the system. So I think it definitely is not a bad showing for Ryan Brown and the rest of the offense. Senior running back Devin Maku has to be the player of the game today. Over 100 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, 20 receiving yards as well. So a great all-around game for him, and he was the focal point of the entire offense. You got to the second half when Purdue needed to run out the clock, needed to make sure SIU did not get the ball back, and it was just consistently handing it off to Makubi over and over again and playing off of him even and things like that. We saw the Wildcat several times with him again where he was effective. I can't wait to see him, pass that ball off to Michael Jackson III or even throw it to Ryan Brown on the side potentially for a trick play eventually. But he was definitely the focal point of the entire game plan for Purdue, and he came through. Carrying the offense on his back, doing a great job throughout the whole second half, and he's definitely the player of the game. Next Saturday, Purdue plays host to USC in Ross-Ade Stadium at 3:30 Eastern Time. That is a game that's going to be really exciting. Super high-profile opponent, the start of Big Ten play coming to West Lafayette. I am a little nervous about it. I think with what we saw today, USC's been passing the ball over the place. They have some of the best wide receivers in the entire nation. They have Jaden Maeva, who's a really strong quarterback, threw for over 400 yards yesterday against Georgia Southern. And so I think they're someone who's really going to test this Purdue secondary in a way they haven't yet. And hopefully they've figured out some of their things on defense after this game, because it is going to be a whole different level of athlete, different level of quarterback, and all those kind of things, alongside the fact that Lincoln Riley is one of the best play callers in all of college football. So it is going to be a different beast coming into Ross-Ade. We'll see if Purdue is up to the challenge next week. My game preview for the USC game will be coming out on Wednesday with all kind of keys to the game, players to watch, all kinds of stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe so you can stay notified of when that is out and stay up to date with your Boilers. Thank you for watching today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and Boiler up.